Hello, you wonderful peep. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the teaser trailer that just came out for the Black Widow movie. If you have not seen it, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. Obviously, this is a teaser, so there's not too much that we get, but there is some information that, we can take away from the trailer. Obviously, not just, it doesn't really tell you necessarily in the trailer, but if you are unaware, this movie is taking place after the events of Civil War, but before the events of Avengers Infinity War. I think that's a very interesting point in time for Natasha to basically be dealing with all of this. But I think it's interesting because it's like, well, and I thought that was kind of a neat element of how they set this up. Obviously, she's kind of bounced around different places. Obviously, her job, being kind of what she is, kind of basically being the assassin that she has basically was trained and raised to be. For that to be her moving from different place to different place until she took the job working with Nick and Hawkeye, that kind of all changed, and I thought that was kind of interesting because they didn't even focus on it in the actual trailer itself of like, oh, what about the Avengers as her family? But like, I guess because S.H.I.E.L.D. was like the first aspect, I think that's what kind of almost made her human, and then the Avengers kind of grew that humanity even more. But I thought that was such an interesting element to it. This is kind of her new family, but currently that new family is broken after the events of Civil War, and that she's kind of on the run. And it's so interesting that basically she has to go from her new broken family to her old broken family. I'm really curious to kind of dive into understanding what was it, because I guess Natasha felt like, well, the fact that she's got to be on the run, and what made her decide to, after all this time, to track down her sister, like what that was all about. And obviously because obviously this also deals with, what was it? They called it the Red Room. It's basically the program that made the it was basically the Black Widow program that made her and others. So it seems like that's going to be kind of like the main threat. Obviously, we get a glimpse at our main antagonist in this being Taskmaster, which is obviously a very different design, which I like the design, but it's going to take me a little while to get used to because only part of the mask is very skeleton-y. It's like part of like the mouth area rather than the entire, and I think there's elements of it with the upper half, but it's not as prominent as I feel like, because I think it's just because in my head, the route I kind of think of is the one you see in the Marvel Spider-Man game for PS4. I feel like, that might be a more modern design, or maybe this is supposed to be a more like, I don't know. It's a different design. It looks good anyway. I just, like I said, it might take a little getting used to, but regardless. So I'm interested to kind of dive into that, like I said, why she turns to her family now and kind of what instigates this whole thing. Like, why now, at any point in time, do you have to confront your past? And I think it's such an interesting element of her being like, she's been so many different people, but she's not going to run from her past anymore. Because I think for her, this version of herself is who she is. She's embraced this version of herself, and this is a version of myself I'm proud of. That, she's, like I said, going through so many different aliases, but this version of herself, this is who she wants to be. This is who she wants to hold on to, because after everything she's been through, I think it's a thing of like the world she grew up in, she didn't have any loyalty ties to any particular group, but now because of everything that she's been through, being a part of the Avengers and everything, I think that changed it, that she does have loyalty. Obviously you even see that in Civil War, even being on opposite sides, she still looked out for Steve and Bucky, so I think that in itself kind of speaks volumes. Obviously we're not even talking about like what her future holds for her with everything about eventually from Infinity War and Endgame, just like how even in those moments how her character has grown as well, so it's gonna be interesting to see her go from who she was in Civil War to who she was in Infinity War, and eventually bleed that into who she became in Endgame as well. So I just think that's kind of all interesting stuff. Like, obviously, once again, I'm pulling a lot from like a teaser trailer, but that's where my mind kind of gets rattling off about the whole thing. So I'm not 100% sure who Rachel Weisz's character is supposed to be. I think I heard before, but I think I forgot. I'm assuming she's kind of like a big sister to Natasha, maybe. I don't know. But I do know that David Harbour is playing what is essentially a Soviet version of Captain America, which immediately my brain is like, if there's been another person out there like Captain America, like why haven't we heard about? To be fair, it's like Winter Soldier, Bucky was like a well-kept secret. Like, he was kind of a whispering shadow of like, oh, this is some assassin, but it was never like, oh, he was infused with the super soldier serum, and it turns out that he was Bucky Barnes. Like, that never, that didn't come up until Winter Soldier. So I just, which that's also another thing I think is going to be interesting about this movie too, is like, obviously it's a very like, There'll probably be science fictional angles, but I think it's going to be a very, like, not just 100% grounded, obviously, but we're going to get, like, Winter Soldier and, like, Civil War levels of espionage. Definitely Winter Soldier, because obviously, like, there were other elements at play in Civil War, but even then, Civil War was still kind of a spy thriller. So obviously, my mind kind of immediately starts thinking, like, some, I guess, a cross between, like, the Bourne movies meets the Mission Impossible movies, which is a weird comparison to make because I don't think I've seen any of the Mission Impossible movies, but I've seen, you know, at least half of the Jason Bourne movies. But regardless, it seems, you know, we get a lot of hand-to-hand combat in this. You kind of know superpowers involved. Well, Taskmaster's whole ability to be able to copy things, but it's not like some crazy ability. It's not an armor or a Hulk or you know, a Norse god type of situation. You get what I'm trying to say? So, but still, I'm interested to kind of take this movie to kind of really, you know, learn more about Natasha's past and what kind of made her into what she is, and, you know, what the changes she's experienced up to this point. And, you know, this story where, like I said, at the end of Civil War, how she takes that and applies that to conquering her past is going to be, you know, a neat element. So I don't know. I really enjoy the teaser trailer. I'm very, very excited to see a full-blown trailer, because I think then we're going to really get into, I've said this phrasing before, but obviously the meat and potatoes, get the real, like, gist of the story. This is kind of, maybe think of this as a little bit of a tone setter, a tiny bit of story sprinkled in, but I think we really will get the real, like, meat of what the story is in, like, the first full trailer. So I'm kind of excited about that. Obviously, in the comments down below, let me know your thoughts about the trailer. Did you like it? Are you excited about the Black Widow movie? What are some things you want to see? What are some things you expect to see? Let me know. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.